Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're wondering where I'm filming, it's obviously in a different place. So this is my husband's office, and that's a 3D printer behind me. We're just working with what we got here. So where have I been? Because I'm back. And if you watched my previous video, you know that I had my third child and took a bit of a break. So he is now 3 months. So I feel like I can kind of get back to reading and talking about books. So that's what I'm going to try and do today. I have been reading, not as much, obviously. I am very busy. I have 3 kids. I'm not able to devote as much time to it, but over the course of the last few months, I did read some books that stood out to me, and I would like to talk to you about them. So this is going to just be 2 that I'm going to mention really fast. One I'll kind of do more of an overview of, which is going to be Sphere by Michael Crichton. And I'll briefly go over the Thursday Murder Club, which I really enjoyed. And I feel like has a very like fall cozy murder vibe. I don't know why I'm holding this hair clip. Put that over there. So if you're interested in the Thursday Murder Club, I'll go over that one first. So I read that one a while back. I read the first 2 in the series, and there's 2 more out already, I think. And this is about these people who live in what in the States would be known as a old folks home. I don't remember what the British or UK equivalent is, but they're older, they're retired, and they're kind of at this very high-end facility where they can live, and if they're in need of medical help or whatever, they can get that there. But this is not like for poor people. This is a nicer place where they all live. So you have Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim, and Ron. I believe are all the names. If I've gotten any wrong, I'll put it there. It's been a little bit since I read it. But you have like Elizabeth is kind of like the cunning, the brains. You have Joyce is like the heart. Ibrahim is like the wisdom, and Ron is the muscle. So they're a group of older folks, but it's kind of like a really great dynamic that they have. And this really, really reminded me a lot of Miss Marple, because you have an older detective group. And these are, people who a lot of the times are overlooked or ignored in society, and are kind of like, okay, well, you're at, the end of your life, like go over there and, we can ignore you. And this book is really good at kind of showing, how their lives are as, kind of being towards the end of their life and bringing that back in like a meaningful way. And I think one of the things it does really well, even I think a little bit better than Miss Marple, is to show that these are people who are thinking about this being their final years. Joyce says that she had just gotten her passport renewed, and she wondered if it would be the last time that she would do that. So it's just like little things like that where you're constantly kind of reminded that these are older people. This is, them living out kind of their final days maybe. And even though they're all in good health. Anyway. So yeah, I think it's good. I like the murder mystery aspect of it. It's definitely not gory. It's not like crazy. It's more of like a cozy murder mystery. And the first one is about like a very obvious, like you can tell from the beginning that they're setting up this bad guy who's going to be killed, and then they're gonna have to figure out who did it. And then the second one, because of Elizabeth's past as kind of seems like she was involved in some government stuff and maybe a little bit of like espionage kind of thing. Her past kind of comes back to haunt her, and that's like the second book. Both good, recommend, fun, quick reads. I really enjoyed them. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is Sphere by Michael Crichton. I have reviewed a few of his books on here before. I apologize for the 3D printer. Maybe I'll put something over this in my editing. I've talked about Jurassic Park, Lost World, Congo, so I thought I'll read Sphere. I feel like this is like the best and worst of Michael Crichton, and it's so much, and not all of it works. And I will say characterization, as always, is a problem with this author. I would say Thursday Murder Club, I'd give like 3.5, 4 stars. They're pretty fun. Okay, so Sphere. So you have this starting out with Norman, who is I can never remember if it's psychiatrist or psychologist. They mean slightly different things. So, but one of those. And he, years ago, had been tasked by the government to come up with he's a crisis like counselor. So he goes to places where there's been natural disasters, there's been, like a plane crash, stuff like that, where he can go and immediately give these people help and be on the spot to like deal with the panic, the, like the people breaking down, and give them comfort and take care of them and help in that way. So that's his job. But he gets tasked by the government to do this report on what he thinks would happen if we encountered alien life. So what we should do, what he thinks the psychological aspects would be, like how would people react, and how should the government respond, and who should be involved in that response. So he writes the report. He does not believe in it. He does not believe in aliens. He is not concerned about this. He thinks it's very silly, and kind of just takes it seriously enough, like he's doing his job, but he doesn't think this will ever, be needed. Well, lo and behold. So years later, he gets a call and they're like, hey, remember that report you did? And the team that you thought would be good to go down and meet alien life potentially. We want you to come and be a part of this team because we have found, well, I didn't even tell him all this to begin with, but basically like the idea being that there's a crash site and potentially alien life. And this is like slowly being revealed to him. He's not kind of, sure about what is, why this report's being brought up. So he gets brought to the crash site area, or where they're near. And they tell him, so we have your team that you wanted assembled. These are all the people that you said would be important for, meeting aliens for the first time. And we, have an alien craft that's down on the bottom of the ocean, but, in the ocean. And we want to go down with this team, and we have a habitat down there, and we want to have you go make contact or go, to this alien ship. Now, the other characters, basically meaningless. There's the generic military general, if I remember, I'll put his name there. There's a few other characters that are kind of more like in the story, like Ted, who's like kind of, they're very like enthusiastic. Oh my gosh, we're gonna, alien life, like this is so amazing and historic, and he's like the hype man for this mission. Then you have Harry, who's the mathematician, I believe, and Beth, who's the biologist, if I'm remembering correctly. And basically Norman, Harry, Beth are going to be your main characters, and their characterization will be paper thin, so you won't feel much attachment to them, don't worry. But they go down to the crash site, they go to the habitat, and already Harry is kind of setting himself apart as being the brains, as you would imagine a mathematician, and he is figuring things out ahead of what they're being told. And he tells them, like, no, it's not aliens. And he doesn't give any reason for why he doesn't believe that this is aliens, but immediately you're like, oh, okay, so what's going on? What's going on? So they get down there, they see the ship, and spoilers. Oh, I guess I should say. Okay, so spoilers. I'm gonna be talking spoilers. I'll put it ahead, like in the, like a spoiler thing. But I'm gonna just tell you guys what I thought of the plot, and I will go through like spoilers along the way. If you want to know my basic thoughts, it's okay. I'd say 3 stars for imagination. I think this is a very interesting, could have been story, but it falters a lot, and there's a lot of things that I think hurt this story, especially like the weak characterization, and then the payoffs at the end turn out to be pretty meh. So Harry's telling them, we're going down, this is not aliens, and lo and behold, it's not. It's a spaceship with English lettering on it, like English words, and they realize like, okay, well, why are we going down to this alien craft that's obviously from Earth, one of ours? So then you're thinking, oh, is this like some kind of covert military operation? No. This is, spoilers, a craft from the future, and they have found it, and they, send all these people aboard, and they kind of like look around. It's unmanned, but in this craft from the future, they find a sphere, and they believe that this is an actual alien object. And like lots of stuff happens along the way, but I'm kind of getting to the gist of the plot just to be like, okay, here it is. So they find the sphere, and they can't get inside. They believe there's something inside of it. They don't know if it's like a weapon, if it's something, you know, good, bad, whatever. They don't know. So they, you know, go back. No, they're monitoring it with cameras, which, you know, I think this was written in like the 1980s. So I will say I understand certain things and like certain aspects of why it was written a certain way, but also they do not take into account certain things that would have been done no matter what. And I'll explain. So Harry, of course, he's the smartest, as we've, you know, kind of clearly seen. I don't mean this in like the others are dumb. He's just like always kind of been one step ahead. And although this means not much to me, the story makes a point of Harry's character being black. And Beth's character being a woman. Obviously, Beth. But this is not something I would have thought about, but the story brings this up as part of something that is going to be explored later at the end of the plot. So Harry, for the reasons of this, like he's black, and I hate having to bring this up. So he figures out how to get in the sphere. They're watching on the cameras and they see the sphere open at one point. They don't know why, but then later Harry goes by himself. They would watch him, the sphere opens, he goes inside. And then like a couple hours later, he emerges from the sphere. So I'm just going to say, there is no way at this point that the military general, I think his name's Barnes, would let Harry back amongst the crew. I don't care what. We didn't go back to the Dark Ages. There's no way Harry just goes into the sphere, comes back out, and they're like, oh yeah, it's cool. Like, what happened there? No. The general's already been told that there could be alien life. There could be an alien we cannot see. There could be alien like germs and things like that we cannot, our bodies can't fight. There could be anything like, and so there's no way that like Harry goes in the sphere and then he's just back amongst the crew. No, he would be put in quarantine. He would be under 24/7 observation. There's just no way. But for plot reasons, this is what has to happen. So Harry's back amongst the crew and he, like things start happening. There's, I can't remember which happens first, if it's their first contact with the sphere or if it's the girl getting eaten by the octopus, like small, I think it's small octopus or small squid of some kind. She goes out and like gets eaten. But like things start going wrong and then the sphere is communicating with them through their computer, which is odd because obviously they're not connected to anything to which they should be able to communicate with, but the sphere is talking to them on their computer. And they ask the sphere, like, you know, what the sphere seems to be very simplistic in its language, but like is talking to them and, you know, wants to keep talking and learning from them. And then the sphere is like, tells them that its name is Jerry and Jerry wants to be in communication. And like, okay, so that all happens where they're communicating with the sphere. Then they stop to kind of like regroup and things continue to kind of go wrong. So we start losing crew members pretty quickly. There's an attack by a giant squid. There's all these things that kind of happen that really mean nothing to us because you're not attached to any of these characters. These characters, like I said, very, very thin characterization. We know Harry is really smart. We know Harry is black. And we know that Beth is a woman. Beth is really strong physically. We know Norman is the only one of the crew who's older, seemingly. He's out of shape and he's white. This matters. And he's the one that really shouldn't be there. Norman is kind of, you know, obviously we're seeing all this through his eyes, and Norman is, we're kind of constantly reminded that he should not be down there. Like physically, he cannot really handle this environment. They're under the water. It's not good for him. He, you know, has parts where he's hitting, you know, gets hit in the head, blacks out. It's just, you know, you're kind of like, he's an old man trying to like, you know, manage down, you know, under the water in this habitat where it's like he's just not, his body's just not doing well and, you know, kind of breaking down. And you can see that where he's just not quite able to keep up with everybody else. So that's what's happening. Then as this crew and crew members are slowly picked off, a lot of stuff happens, but, you know, giant squid attacks a few times and they realize or believe that Jerry is the one sending the giant squid to attack them. They try and get him to stop. But he's talking in this kind of childlike way of like, oh, you know, I want to play with you kind of a thing. He ends up killing Ted, who was the most enthusiastic and excited about the discovery of Jerry. And it's kind of an odd, like, why would he do that? Like Ted was the one who really wanted to be friends, I guess, with this alien life form, once again. So, I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, point being, all these people get picked off. We end up with Beth, Harry, Norman. Like, slowly but surely, everybody's picked off. And some die off screen, like Captain Barnes is kind of like, okay, well, he's gone. And then, I'm pretty sure he dies off screen. And then some, get killed by the squid, like Ted and different things. But, a lot of the, like, military crew that's down there, it's just kind of like, okay, well, they're gone now. There was an explosion, there was this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Norman starts going over the code that Harry had broke to communicate through the computer with Jerry. And he realizes that Harry did not interpret it correctly or purposefully misinterpreted what Jerry said. And when he said his name, it was really Harry. So the whole time, there is no Jerry. There is no communication coming from the sphere. This is all something that Harry is doing. So we kind of get this idea that Harry has some kind of power since coming back from the sphere. But Harry has the most mysterious relationship with the power of the sphere that we see, because it almost seems that he doesn't know what he's doing. And Norman, kind of analyzing this as the psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever he is, seems to believe that this is because Harry has a fear, like a deep psychological fear. And so everything that he does, his manifestation of the giant squid, all of this is just his fear manifesting. And that's why these horrible creatures come and attack. And it's just because Harry is basically living in a constant state of fear. This is brought back to his race as being the only, Black person on the ship, that he lives in fear of being undermined, being ignored, having, his contributions be they would, not be seen for what they are, that he wouldn't be taken seriously, all these things. So that you can think of as, that's the analysis of that from the book's perspective. So Norman tells Beth, like, we got to deal with Harry. So they drug Harry, through a lot of stuff going on. But things don't really start going better for them. And throughout this whole time, we're kind of slowly starting to wonder, either is Norman a really unreliable narrator? Is something wrong with him or something wrong with Beth? Now, throughout all of this, I knew that there was something wrong with Beth, because even though I feel like the book does try to establish that Norman could be an unreliable narrator and that maybe his memory can't be trusted, Norman is the perspective we're always with. And also, he's the most pretty much level-headed, so it just doesn't make sense that all of a sudden he's like, oh, am I doing something weird, or is Beth doing something weird? Also, Beth has become increasingly attractive throughout the span of the goings on. Like, people keep saying, like, oh, Beth, you're so beautiful. Like, what? Like, they just notice, like, she's getting more and more pretty. So, long and short of it, Beth starts to say, like, Norman, it's not just Harry, you also have been in this sphere, and you're also a problem. You need to let me drug you so we can get to the surface safely. And Norman's like, I didn't go in the sphere. I don't. And she's telling him, you did, you don't remember. We keep, I'm trying to explain it to you, like, you have this problem, but you're going to prevent us from basically getting out of here and getting back to the surface, which there was a storm. That's what prevented them from going back to begin with. Whatever. Sorry, I forgot about that. So Beth tells him, like, hey, you need to let me drug you so we can be safe. And he's like, no. So he runs away from her. And since the sphere has been recorded this whole time, he finds the tapes of them recording the sphere and sees that actually Beth went in the sphere. So Beth this whole time has, like, we don't have an exact time code for when she's been changed, but he realizes that things that have happened, she's obviously making herself appear more attractive, and he realizes that the sphere seems to give the person the power to manifest what they think. Like, anything that they think, they can make real. Now, this is another problem with the story, that it has a very, it's a convenient relationship with this power, because sometimes anything you think is manifest, and sometimes things that you have, you can use in your manifestation. Like, the idea being that Beth is kind of like being the only woman, Beth is very defensive. So that's like the analysis of her, and Norman, being the one who would be doing all the analysis, points this out. Beth is very defensive. Beth sets up dynamite around the habitat because she's afraid. She's constantly trying to protect herself. She's constantly feeling taken advantage of as the only woman in this, field where she's not felt like her contributions have mattered or that she's been taken seriously. She's physically strong because she doesn't want to be seen as weak. And you can say that this is really, really paper thin, and it is. Also, I feel like people who reviewed this didn't like it because they would say like, oh, it's the white guy saving the woman and the, black guy. I didn't look at it like that. I more looked at it like all three of them had really big problems. And Norman's was that he didn't belong there. Norman is not in shape. He might be white, but he's also the oldest. So it's like more to me like you have the older guy who's out of place, who doesn't have, who can't physically, compete with these younger people, who's just trying to survive. And that was his thing. Like everybody had their thing. So Norman goes to the sphere. At this point, Beth has been in there. She's manifesting all this stuff to protect herself and keep, kind of Norman out of this, the habitat. So he goes back to the sphere, which is in the other ship. And he realizes that all he has to do is think the ship is open, the sphere, and it will open because that's your manifesting. So gets in there and he believes for a while that he's communicating with this entity, this alien being that's kind of giving him these revelations, and he's having this like amazing conversation. But it's all him. And that's kind of the thing with this sphere is it's just you. You're the one creating, like the sphere gives you the power, but there is no alien life that we ever see. And that's the problem with this book. The more you know, the less interesting this is. This is definitely the like alien at the end of Signs, the movie, reveal. Like it's scary until you see it. And that's why this book, like there is times where it's very creepy. There's a good atmosphere. You're kind of in this, you're in a very confined space with these people, and some of them are crazy and some of them are going even crazier, and a lot of people are dying, and you're not figuring out like, is this an alien that's kind of got this, desire to kill us, or doesn't understand that we can be killed? Are we just slowly going to be picked off because this creature doesn't even understand what humans are? And the problem is, though, once you know that it's just the sphere and the people around you manifesting this power, it's kind of meh. So Norman gets the power himself, obviously, and he starts to basically, like, it's his mind power against Beth's. And he gets to the, they have like a little sub that's a little bit further away from them where they're sending all their like sending all their video recordings to then send to the surface. So he's like, if I can get to the little sub, I can escape. So he's like, I'm just going to ditch Beth and Harry, like every man for himself. I'm the one who should survive. Like I know myself, like I've analyzed myself. I can handle this. They're just weak. So that's the gist of it. And then of course he realizes as he's like partway to the surface, like, no, that's just me giving into the power that, it's the sphere, and I would never really leave them. So that's not like his better half. That's his, weaker inner person that, he needs to fight against. So goes back, gets Harry, gets Beth. Beth fights it the whole way. And like, I'm not gonna lie, as a person who did not care about her character, I was like, leave her. But they all get safely to the surface. They still have this power. They discuss what to do. And here is where the book veers off course in a way that I realized was to have a like, ooh, gotcha moment. Like, ooh, bet you didn't see that coming, but you totally would if you were paying any attention and you knew the characters. So as weak as these characterizations are, what we know about Beth is that she's not going to give up control. That is her whole thing. She is defensive. She does not trust men. This is Beth's character. There is no way that Beth is going to give up this power. And the idea that Norman or Harry, who's very, very, very smart, would believe that Beth is going to go along with them forgetting about the sphere, which is what they would need to do. Because they have this power to manifest whatever they think. Norman's like, all I have to do is just think that we never, like, we just need to like basically be like, we forget everything. Like if we manifest forgetting everything, it never happened, and everything that we imagine happened, like that didn't really happen, will become reality. If that makes sense. So of course at the end they do that, and then Norman turns to Beth and says, "Oh, Beth, you look so beautiful." And that's like and she says, "Thank you." And that's the last line. So you know she's still got the power because she's still manifesting this gorgeous exterior for herself. Because even though she's a strong, powerful woman, she still wants to be desirable, apparently. And that's me reading into something like that I'm assuming Michael Crichton was getting at. But he leaves a lot up to your own interpretation of these characters, which I think would have been, like, I think the psychological aspect of the book was one of its stronger points if you would have committed to it, because the idea of being on this ship in this confined space with a possible alien life form, everyone around you dying, how people react to that, their backgrounds, their life experience, how that influences those decisions is interesting. But because he doesn't really write deep characters, like I'm having to think about, okay, well, why is Beth this way? Why does Beth care about how other people perceive her? Well, she's a strong person. Like she is actually physically strong. So you're having to go, okay, well, if I was, if Beth has always been seen as just strong and, competent, but not, necessarily taken as seriously as she wants to, she might want to also be seen as being more feminine, more beautiful. Not just like, oh, that's Beth, she's the smart one, or she's strong or whatever. She wants that recognition of like, oh, but I'm also a woman. I'm also desirable. And this is all stuff that I have to just come up with out of my mind, because why would the book tell us anything about what Beth actually feels or actually wants? Same with Harry. Why does Harry have all this fear? Like, just because he is of a different race, from a different background, like, it just doesn't make sense that, like, to leave so much out of the story. All the characterization is just not there for me. So I didn't actually care if any of them, like, made it out. And the implication of Beth still having the power also doesn't have any impact, because, like, I don't care. Like, for all we know, like, the thing is that because we know the ship is from the future, we also know Beth doesn't do anything significant with this power, because we already know the future. Nobody knows about this ship in the future. That's kind of like the thing. And one of the things that's interesting is how Norman. One of the things that's interesting is that Harry realizes and tries to write his will while he's under the water, because he is starting to understand that they have no knowledge of this ship in the future. The future, like, obviously this all happens without them knowing about this, and their being down there has not impacted future events at all. Everything still happens in the same way. The ship still goes through the black hole. That's how they theorize that it got through time. That's a whole nother thing that is so, like, seems so plot significant, but ends up not being. And so he's believing that they all die there, because he's like, how could we have seen this? How could we have, like, realized, this great discovery, seen this amazing power of the sphere and all this, and have it not impact the future? But obviously it doesn't, because everything just kind of goes ahead, and they don't talk about alien life or the sphere in the future. This has not impacted future events. So the problem with sphere is that it's trying to do a lot of things: time travel, aliens, underwater, so you have like a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea meets like a time travel meets like a alien, possible alien life form. It's all a lot, and I feel like I said there are times where it really does work, and it's very scary almost, very creepy, or, you feel like, oh man, this is really getting bad for these people. But it just doesn't have the payoff that it needed to. And I think the problem is that the more you know, the less it's less interesting, the less scary. And it's kind of the, okay, it was all a dream kind of a thing, in that it's like, okay, well, it was always us. Like, we were always the problem. It was always Harry, Beth, and Norman that were starting with Harry, then Beth, then Norman. It's like, they're the ones manifesting this power, causing these issues, and it's their own internal thoughts, internal struggles, problems of the inner person, your deepest, darkest, feelings, that is what's, causing other people to die and causing the manifestation of giant squid or, different things. And I think the problem is that like it has a very, like, Harry seems to almost not even be aware of what he's doing. Beth is very aware and can control it, and Norman is even more aware. So I don't know if they're saying that he's just like, because of his background, he's just able to harness the power better, or if it's that, everybody can, has a different ability with it. I don't know. Like I said, this book is okay. I was not bored, but I definitely walked away from it like, take it or leave it, It was okay. I don't think I'll watch the movie. I just didn't like it that much, and I think the plot is very convoluted, and not in like it's just like so plot rich. It's just like, oh, well, it's not this. You thought it was about time travel. You thought it was about aliens. You thought it was about nope. And then you're like, well, but any of those might have been better. And I kind of like the idea of the alien that you can't see. Like, I wish that they would have kept the alien life there, even if it was just in something in their mind, a thought, something that in some way, took them over, because that I think is much scarier versus, oh, well, you all just have kind of these terrible, dark thoughts and you're, ruining everybody's life. And which was kind of what happens. I also thought it was interesting too that, Harry kind of kills a lot of people, and then we don't ever get an explanation if he really understood that it was him doing it. So he was the one manifesting the squid and, these things, but is it his fear that's just manifesting fear objects? Or is he like, I'm so afraid I have to slowly kill off these people? I don't know. It's a morally, I'm kind of like, well, I don't know where we would have landed with that. Like, because shouldn't Harry be tried with like crimes? Beth too, for that matter, because she did a lot of stuff too. I don't know. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it with this. I would say if you really like Michael Crichton, you might like the book, but don't go into it feeling like, oh, this is going to be like anything like Jurassic Park. Even Jurassic Park, which I feel like has not the best characterization, at least has more. And I feel like definitely is a much better written, better plotted out, better written story. So yeah, I will definitely try and make videos a little bit more consistently going forward, but I have no idea how often I'll be able to film. I do have a rant review coming up on The Bear and the Nightingale, because I read that, and well, this is why we can't have nice things. That's all I have to say about The Bear and the Nightingale. Like, no. But that rant review will be coming up soon, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching. Please comment down below what you're reading this week. If you have any fun fall recommendations, let me know. I'm always looking for something for this season. And yeah, let me know if you've read any good books. I'm also, so sorry, I forgot. So I'm doing I think it's called the Monsterverse movies. Me and my husband are watching them. And I've like I've never watched Godzilla movies before, but watched like the Godzilla movies, the Kong movies, Godzilla versus Kong, all that. It's like, fun. So if you have any books that you feel like are good monster books, let me know. Because I have read like The Meg, and I read, what was the other one that was like monstery? Oh, Jurassic Park. So yeah, like The Meg, like Jurassic Park. But if you have something that's like actual monster, let me know. Tell me in the comments. I'm looking for a good recommendation. Thank you, and I will talk to you guys soon, hopefully.